this has kind of been a rolling story, but the NHL's been trying to implement these LGBTQ pride warm-up jerseys. Some organizations are wearing them, auctioning them off for causes. But I mean, this is standard practice. They do this for breast cancer. They do this for, I mean, I don't know, just other pet PR causes that the league is trying to promote. I mean, and it's it's purely aesthetic until it's not. Until you're one of the weirdos that chooses to actively not participate in it, or you're a team like the Chicago Blackhawks and the Minnesota Wild who canceled what their Pride jersey night because they were worried they'd put their Russian players at risk because of anti-gay laws in Russia. And I'm like, have you been to the United States? Because pretty sure in Florida, don't say gay is the law of the land. And DeSantis just said he's trying to extend it to 12th grade. And there have been a million copycat bills throughout the country, hundreds of anti-trans bills, anti-drag bills being promoted. So let's not besmirch, let's not, throw stones when we're in glass houses is all I want to say.
And not, this is not to diminish that point whatsoever, but it's also just as a corollary to that. This is also not just a domestic trend, international trend, global trend, in the sense that Uganda just passed a sweeping piece of enormously, unbelievably, transparently homophobic legislation nationally, where either identifying as part of the LGBTQIA plus community, being in a gay or queer relationship is punishable either by prison time or death, if I'm not mistaken. These issues have not been laid to rest.
No.
Like, they are active, they are kinetic, they are current.
And look, and the Rangers also, they didn't give an explanation. They just canceled their jersey situation. Who knows who on the team was against it? But there have been 4 players to come out publicly against the Pride jerseys and not wearing them. Provorov of the Flyers was the first. Then, though, non-Russian James Reimer, the Sharks goalie, who just says that he's just a Christian. And we have his statement on that. Maybe we'll play it in a second. Then the Stahl brothers, Eric and Mark, on the Florida Panthers, with all the concern about Russian players facing ramifications for supporting gay people, it wasn't that much of a concern for Sergei Brabovsky. Fuck. You know who I'm talking about. The goalie for the Panthers, who ended up wearing one of the jerseys. Now, these guys are just bigots, and they're too insecure to support LGBTQ people without people like, maybe they'll think we're gay. But this is Reimer's explanation, which, again, total bullshit.
Initiative, the San Jose Sharks have chosen to wear a jersey in support of the LGBTQIA plus community tonight. For all 13 years of my NHL career, I've been a Christian, not just in title, but in how I choose to live my life daily. I have a personal faith in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for my sins, and in response, asked me to love everyone and follow him. I have no hate in my heart for anyone. I've always strived to treat everyone with respect and kindness. In this specific instance, I'm personally choosing not to endorse something, a sexual identity or orientation that is counter to my convictions, which are based in the Bible, which I consider the highest authority in my life. I strongly believe, I feel like I couldn't reiterate that enough. I strongly believe that every person has value in life. Value and worth. You guys, my teammates, everyone. I strongly believe that every person has value and worth, and people in this community. And the LGBTQIA plus community, like all others, should be welcome in all aspects of the game of hockey. So obviously, that's kind of my statement.
Yeah, so that's total horseshit. Then just wear the jersey if you're in such support of the LGBTQ community. It's either one or two things.
I'm so supportive and think that everyone deserves to be loved and respected, and that everyone deserves to be treated the way they want to be treated, but I won't wear the gay jersey because it's gay.
So gay. Maybe people will think I'm gay. I mean, that's really what it is. It's either that you're so insecure about your own sexuality that you can't be wearing a pride jersey that's clearly sanctioned by your team and your other very straight macho teammates are wearing it, or you don't actually support LGBTQ people. You're reading a prepared statement that says nothing about your support, because I gotta be honest with you, dude. I don't really care what the paper says, what your note on your phone says. Your support for the LGBTQ community means nothing if there's no action behind it. Support is not, a thought that you have. Support is not like, I don't know, the color of underwear that you decide to put on. Well, that wouldn't even apply here. My point is that there's no abstract notion of support. It's based in action. So I don't want to hear that you support the LGBTQ community when you won't take a basic action just to signal support. We just spoke about how the World Baseball Classic is important because it expands the game to people internationally and brings this kind of national pride, camaraderie where other people can participate. It's an easy entryway to fans who might not know much about baseball to get wrapped up in this kind of thing. This is another way that hockey's trying to grow, or the NHL, even though it's completely toothless, is trying to grow the game. They're just trying to say, hey, I know the sport is traditionally very conservative, very white, but you're welcome here. It's in their financial interest to say so, because they want as many people involved in hockey as possible. And there's a cynicism to it, but that's what this is about, trying to grow the game. And these bigots are actively making the game less hospitable to everybody.
And that's what I want to reiterate also about like all of this other rancor politically about like ESG investing, woke investing, like the M&Ms are gay now.
Yeah.
Like Hershey's had a trans woman hawking their chocolate. You don't think these companies, and it's like someone like the NHL, and I'm not saying all of this is hollow and empty. However, you don't think they're doing this because they want to sell candy bars? Yeah. Because they want to sell M&Ms? Because they want to fill seats? Sell hockey jerseys, sell concessions at the games? This is also for money.
Yes.
It's not the NHL purporting and forwarding a queer agenda. They want to sell jerseys.
Yeah.
Like you are actively making this more difficult because instead of letting them do that, everyone thinks the NHL is homophobic now.
But
great job, guys.
But that's what they want. That's literally the dirty secret about these kinds of these old boy club sports, and I really do include. Look, I mean, the NFL is on that spectrum too, but it's really bad in baseball, but it's the worst in hockey. It's by far the worst in hockey. They don't care about growing the game. These guys don't care about growing the game. They actually want it to be white boys club,
Absolutely.
Canadian, North American, mostly, guys.
Straight
white men that play a sport where it's so insular that, I don't know, their level of skill isn't necessarily threatened by other people coming in and maybe, I don't know, just having a fresh take on how to play the game, and there being a broader pool of people to come in and take their jobs. And it's systemic for the NHL broadly. I just was ranting about how the fucking Coyotes play in a college stadium because their owners are too cheap and didn't pay rent on the other stadium. And Bettman is still propping up the Coyotes and not forcing them to sell. That has lowered the cap. It lowers the marketability of the league. They don't necessarily want to grow the game. They just want these owners to make enough money, have enough people show up. The value of these teams, despite the NHL's efforts, continues to increase on an annual basis, and they have that asset, and that's enough for them. But the standard needs to be a lot higher, in my opinion. We should have a World Cup of hockey to grow the game, by the way. And it needs to be promoted as a more inclusive place if growing the game is your aim. And for a lot of these guys, as I just said, I don't think it is.
Absolutely not. Also, I was just curious if you want to give me a little runway. I'd like to also just as a palate cleanser play a video of Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers, who had a really nice corollary to the bullshit that Reimer just said here. So let me just cue that up for a second as you filibuster for me.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, so I genuinely think that's the dirty little secret of hockey when people say, why don't these players show more personality? I mean, even within the league, I've spoken to hockey fans who are just bigots about Russian players. Like they're just bigots. I have a little community on Twitter online, like with Rangers fans and things like that, and they just think that Russian players, all skilled, no grit, essentially saying, they're not hard workers, and there's general just bias towards the North American players and white players, obviously, as evidenced by the fact that there are so few black players. But here's this clip that Bradley was just referencing.
Yeah, I think, listen, everybody has their own personal opinion. To me, it's an obvious no-brainer. If I was in that position, I'd wear one. It doesn't go against any of my beliefs. It's probably, on the contrary, I think it's extremely important to be open and welcoming to that greater community, just because they're a minority and they face a lot of persecution over the years, and to have to show that we care and that we're willing and ready to include them in our game and our sport is extremely important to me. Like I said, I don't think, it's a hard question just because people have their own personal beliefs. I just don't agree with them.
Good on him. Good on him. That's really refreshing. And because, again, the
most politically articulate thing I think I've ever heard a hockey player say in my 15 years of watching hockey.
I mean, it was well said. And it makes me feel like it puts back into context some of what I had to say. Just these guys, despite the sport being so conservative, there are a lot of good guys that play this game too.
And I think, and also, I just like the reason why I brought up the Uganda thing, and I think it's also important for MAU that you brought up the the legislation in Florida and the anti-trans, anti-drag, anti-CRT, all of this legislation that's populating all across state houses all across the country, is that this stuff like something like this, like what Zach Hyman says, is infinitely more important than being like, we have to protest the Flyers doing a pride jersey, because that stuff doesn't really fully matter in the sense of like that's what I mean by I'm not saying it doesn't matter. What the actions by Provorov and guys like that matters, because they are sending a message about they are sending a message that they can't even abide by a money making tool for this type of thing. They won't even they are so exclusionary, they are so bigoted that they won't even cash a check to wear a pride themed jersey. But something like this, where Zach Hyman has zero incentive. He has no need to say something like this, because
Edmonton wasn't doing one of these nights.
The Oilers weren't even doing a pride night. He said, I didn't even have the opportunity to wear one. He has no opportunity, he has opportunity. He has no need to say something like this. Why it's important is because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And people can see this. Anyone, any gay, trans, non-binary, queer hockey fan, and they exist. That's the point.
Yes.
They exist.
Yes.
And it is difficult to like sports when you identify that way. And that's because they make it, athletes and organizations make it extremely difficult to do so. So for him to do this buff macho hockey player saying he doesn't agree with these bigots for not supporting an initiative that is for money.
Yep.
It's very important, because he's not doing this for money. He cashes a check either way. He's on the ice either way. They're not even doing one. It's good that he did it, and I commend him very much for it. And I think for as difficult and as adversarial and as rough as this situation must be for a lot of queer hockey fans and a lot of queer people, if anything, I appreciate that it's forced some of these players to talk about this stuff like this.
Yep. Well said. Well said.